I'm having to re-record this because I messed up the mic in the first take. But hopefully it will be a little more organized because last time I'm talking about Chicago, specifically this but overview of like the musical. It is a story about our protagonist Roxy Hart. She kills a guy and she goes to jail, and she's got like a trial, and there's like a bunch of court drama going on. She's always wanted to be famous, like a famous performer with her own act on vaudeville. So the whole story is kind of constructed around like a series of vaudeville acts where people come up and they perform, they sing about whatever. So the entire story is connecting the idea of like a performance to like the American justice system, specifically in the era 1920s, where people who are being convicted, who would have a trial, would basically be doing a song and dance for their jury to uh not convict them of the crime, or at the very least not give them the death penalty. That's the whole theme. It's like the relationship between performer and audience and how that connects to the justice system in America. So specifically, I want to focus on the Cell Block Tango, the fourth track in the musical. It In the song we have six women who have committed murder, mostly against it. I think all of them against like their spouse, save for one of them who was like a pivotal character in like the whole theme of the movie musical. The musical in this song, they're all describing like what happened the night that they murdered whoever it was that they murdered. In the third verse, we have the murderess June. She comes and describes what led up to the murder of her spouse, um, why she did it, whatever. Wrote a clip.
Now I'm standing in the kitchen, carving up the chicken for dinner, minding my own business. In storms my husband Wilbur in a jealous rage. "You've been screwing the milkman," he said. He was crazy, and he kept on screaming, "You've been screwing the milkman." And then he ran into my knife. He ran into my knife 10 times.
For years after hearing this soundtrack from the movie musical, every time I've heard June's part, I've been thinking this sounds kind of jungly. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but she's black. June is the only black woman in this lineup of murderesses, and when she's going to describe like her story, like what happened the night of, they like add all of these bongo. First of all, they drop all of the melodic instrumentation, and then they have like bongos and stuff like happening in the background when she's describing her story. It's been in the back of my mind because I like the Cell Block Tango, and I've been like, ooh, this is such a fun song. Oh my gosh. Recently I decided to get critical of it. Like, what are we listening to? What is happening here? Initially I thought it was racist. For the same reason that like calling black people monkeys is racist. It's just another way to dehumanize people. You have like this like exotic, jungly, vaguely just spat everywhere, vaguely African music to backtrack the one black girl in a lineup of six women, all of the other ones who are white, except for like the last one. I think she's like Latina. I don't know. Creating this texture in the music where it's like kind of jungly sounding is just another way to like dehumanize this black woman and make her seem more animalistic and therefore like less capable of rational thought than like a white woman. That's why that's why theoretically this is racist. But I came away with a different takeaway because I didn't want to believe that Chicago was racist because I really guys, I really like this movie. Holy moly. I really like this movie. I also listened to a bunch of other cell block tangos from previous Chicago recordings. I listened to the 1975 soundtrack.
Standing in the kitchen, carving up the chicken for dinner, and in storms my husband Wilbur in a jealous rage.
The 1997
You've been screwing the milkman, he says. He was crazy and he kept on screaming.
and the British one. I don't know what year that was in.
You've been screwing the milkman! And then he ran into my knife. He ran into my knife 10 times!
All of them, except for one, have June, the woman who sings this verse, portrayed as a black woman. And none of the other ones have like this bongos and stuff in the background. And again, this is just coming off of like my American, understanding of like what music sounds like. So, but none of the other soundtracks were doing this. They would have all the melodic instrumentation drop out and still have like just percussion, but it wasn't like bongos and stuff, bongos said generally. I don't know. I couldn't get like a list of like the instruments that were used in the cell block tango, which is so infuriating to me. I just feel like this movie is so insanely good, and like it's so good, and no one wants to do a musical analysis on like the instruments and like every whatever. I tried taking notes on the instruments. I don't know a damn thing about percussion, but from what I could hear, I just wrote bongos question mark, and then there's some kind of like higher percussive instrument that's kind of like almost like it's keeping tempo. It's not exactly a hi-hat, but it's like it's higher. It almost sounds like a maraca, like texturally to me. And then there's some kind of like bell thing that comes in at certain points to emphasize certain lyrics, along with like the drum that comes in too. Anyway, the whole point of the musical is spectacle and how you are perceived by an audience. June, as a black woman, is going to be perceived by an all white, all male jury differently from how her white counterparts are going to be. As a woman, they are already in a difficult position having murdered somebody. Murder is bad, but the thing is, as a woman committing murder, you are acting outside of your femininity. You are acting outside of like your patriarchal norm of like what a woman is supposed to be doing. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy highlights Kate Millett's theory on gender socialization. It states, for instance, Kate Millett takes gender differences to have essentially cultural rather than biological basis that result from differential treatment. For her, gender is the sum total of parents, the peers, and the culture's notions of what is appropriate to each gender by way of temperament, character, interest, status, worth, gesture, and expression. Feminine and masculine gender norms, however, are problematic in that gendered behavior conveniently fits with and reinforces women's subordination, so that women are socialized into subordinate social roles. They learn to be passive, ignorant, docile, emotional helpmeets for men. There's a reason why Roxy had Amos take the fall for the murder at the beginning of the movie. In the beginning of the movie and the beginning of the musical, Roxy murders the guy she's having an affair with. Amos comes home, and before the police get there, she tells him to take the fall for the murder, because if she gets found out for having murdered a guy, she's going to prison, which is exactly what happens. He almost got off because it was seen as like a protective measure. He killed this man because he was a robber, and he was probably going to molest his wife. Right. So gender plays a part, is my point. June is different, however, because her blackness is also working against her in this case. You're already acting outside of your femininity as a woman in a patriarchal society, which is bad. And then on top of that, you have the audacity to be black. Blackness has been stereotyped to be a hyper masculine, animalistic kind of trait to have, where like you're incapable of rational thought the same way that white people are. This has been used to further colonization, imperialist agenda, not just against black people, like against basically all brown people, but we're talking about black people specifically. In The Souls of Black Folk, Du Bois writes The Negro is born with a veil and gifted with second sight in this American world, a world which yields him no true self consciousness, but only lets him see himself through the revelation of the other world. It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. I don't know if that lady is black. She kind of just came with the template and I didn't know what else to put. If you take into account both of these attributes that June has, it's like she already is in like a very tight spot. I don't know how else to she already is like coming off to the jury in a very specific way before she even opens her mouth to speak. This is why her choreography is portraying her and her spouse like literally literally like stalking around each other. Also, her spouse is the only person who has like his shirt off, and like the all of the people who have been killed by these murderesses. Her spouse is the only one who like has his shirt off. Not only has his shirt off, but like they emphasize the point by like actually pointing the camera at him. Look at his shirt. Look at this shirtless brown chest. Let's get a close up on that. Further emphasizing the point of like dehumanization. He is the victim in this circumstance, and yet we're still focusing on his blackness, his masculinity. And then all of this comes back around to the point of the musical, which is spectacle and how you are perceived by the audience. And in universe, the all white, all male jury, but non-diegetically, I don't know if I can use that, non-diegetically, how the audience is also perceiving someone. I got some historical corrections, statistics. In the year 1920, 90% of the population in America was considered white, and 9% of the population was considered black. Meanwhile, 1923, was it 75%? 75% of people committed to jails and workhouses in this year were white, whereas 23% were committed in the same year, which isn't like a super big disparity, but it's marginal that like 9% of the population is 23% of the people in jails and workhouses at the time. And it's a statistic well known to this day that like, I mean, after Reagan and all of that, war on drugs, all of that, well known statistic that black and brown communities are over policed more, significantly more than white community. You have cases like Sada Shakur, who while she was in prison, she was pregnant and she was like actively giving birth and they provided her no care. You have cases like Emmett Till, who was a black boy and he was able to get like brutally murdered, like horrifically murdered, um based on based on hearsay, and those people who murdered him were just able to get off like scot free. And then you have present day cases, like Breonna Taylor, who she was just in her house and then she got shot up by the police in her own home. Meanwhile, there are people who have been able to get off for like rape charges, even though there's been like significant evidence pointing to them being guilty for it. All that to say that race plays a significant role in the justice system, has like historically speaking. And in a plot like this with very feminist themes, it would have been like a huge missed opportunity if they just didn't acknowledge the role that intersectionality plays in a situation like this. And I think that they do that through the musicality, through the choreography, in the portrayal of the cell block tango. So that's my point. This is significantly shorter and a lot more organized. I mean, I'm still distracted as hell, but like we did it. Yay.